Welcome to this episode of Chattin with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Jamie Tall.
Hey, what's up?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Did I see on there you're from Connecticut?
Yeah, yeah,
And are you Italian?
yeah.
No wonder.
Yep. Yeah, I live in the
Nice.
same town as ESPN.
Okay, cool. I grew up in East Boston.
I go to Boston a lot.
Yeah.
I'm from Bristol. Of course, I know Aaron Hernandez. Right?
Right.
Everybody says they know him that lives here. So, where were you born and raised?
I was born in Massachusetts, East Boston. And that was pretty much where I spent like a lot of my childhood.
What made you move?
Oh, my parents like to move a lot. They I don't know. My dad he was involved in some things coming from a big Sicilian family, and he was getting involved with some people he shouldn't have been involved with, and I think he tried to make some geographical changes for my mother's sake to do the right thing and be a family.
How old were you when you guys moved?
Oh, let's see. The first move, I was 5, and we moved to Georgia. But then after that, we moved back to Massachusetts. And then we moved to New Hampshire, and then we moved to Florida.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they were pulling you out of school all the time, right?
Yeah, I
Different
went to
schools.
12 different schools by the time I got to high school.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Well, my dad was a professional alcoholic, and he was pretty functional, but it was very chaotic, in the household. And my dad just couldn't seem to want to stay away from trouble. So,
Oh, was he getting in trouble back then?
well, he never really got in trouble, you know. That was kind of like what all the quick moves were about, but he got arrested a couple times.
So what was your life like in the early years?
You know, it was pretty stressful, honestly, as a child. I like to say that my parents did the best that they could with what they had. They had me when they were 16 years old. So, they dropped out of school and, tried to be parents. And my father, still with his affiliations, and my mom, having a newborn, it was a lot. And then with, the substance use in the house, the alcoholism. Um, and I learned very quickly how to cope with that kind of thing. And my first addiction actually was escape.
What, you'd run away?
No, I actually would like write stories or make up like different personas. Like if I was gonna move somewhere, right? I like move somewhere else and like, oh, I'm gonna be that Jamie didn't work out very well. They didn't like her, so I'm gonna be somebody else, Or like pretending. There was a lot of like pretending. I remember even like me and like one of my cousins, pretending to do drugs, like taking paper, like, and this is, I was, God, probably like 11 years old, rolling up paper and pretending to like sniff things, like all this stuff, which, is all stuff that I saw growing up. Saw a lot of violence growing up. And, we would pretend like we were in like the movie Goodfellas and things like that, watched a lot of The Godfather. So, yeah, so that's
Yeah,
how I coped.
grew up in an era where they could spank your kids and things, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Spanked, hit with a bell. My mom used to chase me with a wooden spoon. That was her thing.
Mine
So,
too. And she broke
yeah.
it over my ass a few times.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
when did you first get introduced to doing drugs or drinking? When was your first? introduction to it besides, you
So,
know,
the very first time I ever tried to drink, I was copying my dad. I was 11 years old, and I had a really bad day at school because I had gotten made fun of a lot. It was really really hard for me to fit in wherever I was, and so I remember coming home from school and being like really upset, and going behind my dad's bar and getting a tall glass and filling it up with vodka and trying to chug it, and I immediately threw up.
wow.
And that was, I was just copying, right? Well, this is what dad does when he's stressed out, so let me try it, right? But I didn't drink for a while after that, probably not till I got to high school. So when I got to high school, we moved to Manchester, New Hampshire, which was very different from East Boston, which is where I moved from East Boston to New Hampshire. My parents wanted to make sure I was away from crime and I was away from gangs, and they didn't want me to get into the kind of life that my father was in. So, so they bring me to New Hampshire, which there's nothing but like cows and fields, right? And I find my very first friend group that fully accepts me for who I am, and they are drug dealers. And
In a
so,
small town, and there's nothing really going on there, right?
yeah, it's absolutely nothing going on there. So, yeah, I mean, but it was just high school stuff, right? It was like, a little bit of like pot, the little like Boone's wine cooler things. And then there was the occasional like acid and mushrooms and staying up all night watching like Austin Powers and like laughing, and it was fun then, right?
Yeah.
If it would have stayed there, that would have been amazing. But I think when I really figured out that it could be a solution was when I was at this party. I think I was a sophomore or a junior. I'm at this party, and there's like all these like, popular kids there, and I really wanted to fit in. And I was like super nervous, like anxiety, and they were, sort of passing around stuff, and I partook a little bit more than I normally would. And all of a sudden, something clicked in my brain. And all of a sudden, I was funny and I was charming and people liked me and I felt comfortable. And I thought to myself, this is what I've been looking for my whole entire life. And that's kind of, how it started.
That's exactly what happened to me too. Once I found alcohol and drugs, I just, it was like I lost all that caring about anything.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then of course it progressed, to trying different things, and and I used other things just as addictively as I did drugs, relationships, sex, um like just food. I was always like I was either like binge eating my feelings away or I was starving myself, like one of the two. Super bad like disordered eating, body dysmorphia, all of these kind of things. Coming from a big Italian family, you know what I mean? We're taught to like eat all the pasta and bread and everything.
Yeah.
And we did that, like we ate pasta like 5 nights a week. Come to find out, in my older age, I have like this weird carb intolerance. So I'm like, that's why I was fat my whole life.
From the pasta, right?
From all the pasta.
Were you getting in trouble at this point in your life?
No, I was actually like a really good kid. I was very like performance driven, right? So I wanted my parents to accept me and love me, and the way that I did this was through achievements. So I did it through, clubs. I was on student council. I got good grades. Um, I was, just a bunch of different things in the school. I did theater, and went to college and everything. So I actually was like a pretty high functioning um person with a substance use disorder for a long time.
When did you leave New Hampshire?
Let's see. I left New Hampshire in 2003, so I was 23 years old, and I had gone to college and got an associate's degree, almost a bachelor's degree, and decided to take a break. And then I got bad into cocaine and started smoking crack for my first time. And right after that, I got pregnant with my son, and my parents made another very quick change and moved to Fort Lauderdale, which was very different from New Hampshire.
Oh, so you went from New Hampshire to Fort Lauderdale?
Mm-hmm.
And is that where you
Yes.
started doing drugs, or was it up in New
No,
Hampshire?
it was
Like
in New Hampshire, and
when
I
you
was
started the cocaine?
mm-hmm, yes, and crack. But then I got pregnant, so I left with my parents when they moved. Like as soon as I got pregnant, like a month later, my parents moved to Fort Lauderdale. So I
And
just
did
went
that
with
help
them.
you though, being pregnant? Were you like, I'm not gonna do drugs while I'm pregnant?
Yeah, I mean, it did help. I mean, well, I didn't know anybody, first of all. So that was, a blessing at that time. I didn't know anybody. So I did stay sober through that pregnancy and had my son. His dad eventually moved down to Florida where I was. We, you know, did the good parent thing. I was a stay-at-home mom for a little while. I mean, I think I stayed sober for my son's first whole year. I mean, I was like the good mom, like I like breastfed, I did all the things, right? And then like all of a sudden, there was like an Applebee's right down the street from where we were living, and I decided that I was gonna go to work, and so I would work nights at the Applebee's, and his dad worked real early in the morning. So we kind of just like, switched off, took care of the kid, and, it was going well. And then all of a sudden, one weekend, I was working as like a bar server, which is like a waitress in the bar area. And there was a guy there who had cocaine, and I thought, oh well, it's Friday night. I can just get a beer, and do
While
some
you're working,
cocaine.
you do this while you're working?
Yeah, it was like the end of the night. I mean, we were up
Yeah,
until
yeah.
like 2, 3 in the morning, and like, oh, it'll be all right, and just that one time, it was like I went back to where I was. Like I hadn't taken any time off, it was just like bam, right back in it. And of course, bring some home to my kid's dad, and before you know it, he and I are smoking crack and, not taking care of our baby. And then my son, um, I think he was 18 months old when his dad had to go do like 4 or 5 months in jail. And
He started
when
getting in
his
trouble down there.
it was from some previous charges in New Hampshire. It was stupid. It was for like selling an ounce of weed to an undercover.
Stuff you get away with nowadays, right?
Absolutely, but back then it was a felony.
Yeah.
So yeah, so he went back to New Hampshire to do a couple months in jail, and I stayed in Florida, and really wanted to keep the apartment. And so I tried to have like some roommates to help with my baby and stuff, but I couldn't make that work. So I decided to let my mom take my son for a little while so I could get on my feet. And that was a terrible idea. Probably the biggest regrets in my whole entire life.
But did your mom know that you were on drugs at the time, and was there signs? Did she like sense anything was going on?
I'm sure she did, because I mean I was always into something, so it not like it would be like a surprise to
Yeah.
her. So I'm sure that they always like thought that, even if I wasn't. Um, so yeah, her and my dad took my son, because my dad, he wasn't working at the time, he was on disability, so stayed home with my son, and they lived about 2 hours away from me in Florida. And I was working real hard to get everything paid. I remember I worked like 30 days straight at Applebee's, but I still couldn't get ahead because like we had, on our little, when we started using again, of course, the money went from going to the bills to going to the drugs. And we were behind a little bit on like rent and electric and all that. So I had a friend who worked at Applebee's with me, and she said, "Hey, you can come work with me over here on the weekends, and you can make some really good money." And she worked at a strip club,
Of
and
course.
and yeah, of course. And at that time, I thought that was like a really good idea. I was like, "Oh yeah, I can do that," and and that was a terrible idea, So kind of got into like that lifestyle, which was just crazy, just
Yeah,
crazy.
I know how it is. After I got sober, I got a call that they wanted me to work at this high-end strip club as a DJ, and I took the job sober. And I went there and worked for 6 months, and wild things going on there. And I'm just like, damn, I can't believe I made it 6 months sober.
Yeah, yeah. It was wild in there, just getting drunk, and of course it led to like other things. To me, like escorting and just like a wild life. And I didn't have my kid's dad, didn't have my kid. It was, I was just sad all the time and depressed and
Yeah,
didn't.
you're missing your son, right? And you're
Yeah.
like, I just want him back, and the cycle just continues to snowball. Was there any
Mm-hmm.
dangerous situations you got yourself into during that
Oh
time?
yeah,
Can you walk me
tons.
through one?
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten like guns pulled out on me before. I almost got kidnapped one time. That was really scary. Had to like run out of this person's house. I was with one of my girlfriends, and I had met these guys at the strip club, and they were like, "Oh, come back to," I think they were just like visiting. They were from like New York or something, and like, "Oh, come back, we have some coke and we'll hang out, whatever." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So of course, and I'm only going there, I'm not going there to be like a good person, right? I'm going to take their cocaine and leave, right?
Yeah.
And we go there, and it was like, man, like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, and they had like, I mean, the biggest bag of cocaine I ever saw. Like, it was huge. um and I was like, okay, well, I think I have to, like, I'm gonna go because the sun's coming up, right? And they were like, the one guy got really mad and like started like yelling, and the other guy's telling him like, calm down, calm down. And the guy was like, I'm taking her out the back door. Just like, oh my goodness, like I'm gonna die. And so that was really scary. I was like, okay, okay, like I won't leave, but let me just go get my stuff from my car. Let me go get my makeup bag and stuff so I can fix myself, right? And of course, like I went in my car and took off.
Yeah, you're like, hell no, I ain't dealing with these guys. Like,
Yeah, it was wild. So there was that. Oh my goodness. Let's see. A little while after that, I had gotten arrested in a prostitution sting. That was really scary. I was in this
how did
Polk
it
County.
how did it happen? Oh, the guy that shows them on the TV all the time, right?
Yes.
I spoke with him, the officer, the
Mhm. It
sheriff, I think. Yeah.
it was it was pretty awful. Yeah. So I was running like a Craigslist ad, and I had like these friends, and they did it too or whatever. And I was in like a pretty low point in my life. My father had just passed away at 42 from his third heart attack. And due to substance use disorder and alcoholism. And I had zero coping skills whatsoever. And so it really kind of spiraled me. So I wasn't exactly like being cautious when I got the phone call from the guy, right? What, sex for money? How much money are you gonna give me? Okay, sure.
Yeah, that's the screening you do. That's all you do, right? He sounds
Like,
good. He sounds legit.
yeah, like you don't even say that. You don't even say those things, right? So when I ended up going over there, it was so interesting. So I go and he has me come to this hotel, and I remember like going into the hotel, and he opens the door and he had a baseball cap on, and I walk in the room and he's got a laptop on the desk and the mirror is broken. And I'm like, well, this is kind of sketchy, you know? So it really like flagged me, like gave me like red flags instantly. And then he normally, when you go into a call like that, the guy just like takes his clothes off, right? It's like pretty cut and dry. Well, this guy wants to start asking me questions like, well, what can you buy on Craigslist? And I was like, I don't know. You tell me.
What, like
Like,
drugs wise? He's
I
asking
think
you things.
he was trying to get me to say like sex, you can buy sex on Craigslist. You know what I mean? And I wasn't cooperating
Yeah, because you
in
have
the
to tell them a
lingo.
certain amount of money for what's gonna happen, and then they
Right.
got you, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I wasn't participating, and so he started getting really mad. And I remember I tried to run out of the hotel room and he started screaming at me, and I thought either I'm going to jail or this guy's going to murder me. And I took a step back and went to make another run for the door. And it was a double door hotel room, and the other door swung open, and there were probably 25 sheriffs and news reporters. And um, I just remember like sinking back and putting my hands in my face. And for the first time in a really long time, I said, "Oh God." Like I just called out like, "God, no." And it was awful, you know, it was really awful. But I did um end up, you know, getting those dismissed because of circumstance, the evidence, the not having evidence, whatever. And but it was the first time that I ever like went to jail. Like I mean, Polk County, Florida is not a pretty jail. It's not a fun
How
not
old
a
are
fun
you at
place.
this point?
26.
And how long do you stay in there for? And is this your first experience, like going to jail?
In like I went to jail in New Hampshire one time. I got busted smoking pot in a movie theater, or in a drive-in, and like so I didn't really like go into the holding cell. Like they brought me to the jail, but they
What
were
they do?
like,
Knock on your window? You're
yes,
smoking
they
pot?
literally did. They
No.
literally did. And I was watching Bad Boys, if you can believe it.
Oh,
Of
man.
all things. So yeah, it was terrible. But anyway, yeah, so this is the first time going to like a real like a big boy jail, you know? And so it was pretty terrifying, and I ended up getting bailed out. And for a little while, I tried to do the right thing.